This is a Heart and Hand production.
Hello and welcome to the preview here on Heart in Hand. This show is previewing Scotland's upcoming game against Morocco at the far more sociable time, 11 p.m. on Friday the 19th. My name's Iain Campbell. I'm your host. I'm delighted to say I am joined by Mr. Stephen Harrigan.
Not bad. It's still, I think, like half of Scotland still struggling with jet lag after that game. Ridiculous kick-off time, wasn't it? The time between, I think, 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, it was tough going, even for somebody like myself who's well versed in Super Bowls. I know Zander will be somebody who stays up late for the wrestling, or we did it at boxing, but it was tough to get there, but it was worth it in the end.
Yes, it was indeed. And also joining me is Mr. Zander's staff.
Thanks for having me back on, Iain. I seriously didn't think we would be doing this pod again, talking about Scotland at the top of the group so far at this very moment in time, but that is absolutely the reality there, so happy to be back on.
Yeah, I'm very much like Stephen. I think that was an almighty night shift on the Saturday into the Sunday. I was the proverbial burst ball on Sunday, much to my good lady's chagrin, that I spent most of Sunday lazing about and in my bed. I was no use to man nor beast, but it was worth it because we got that victory, and I think that's probably the best way to put it. We'll come on to talk about the game, and I'll get the guys to break down their opinion on it. Fair to say, I think it was a collective sigh of relief around Scotland when the full-time whistle went. We got the victory, we get 3 points on the board, and obviously the result earlier on in the evening, the 1-1 draw between Morocco and Brazil, meant that Zander mentioned there, Scotland were propelled to the top of their qualifying group. Stephen, your thoughts on the game?
It wasn't a particularly pretty game, but look, when we win our first World Cup game since 1990, it doesn't really matter. I know there is a feeling of fear, perhaps, that it's another Zaire, that we don't score enough, and that's what comes and perhaps bites us in the ass later on in the group. But this victory was important because of the result that happened earlier on. Morocco, Brazil, I know we'll touch on both teams in more detail. But look, when that game played out to be a draw, I think the added pressure, added expectation, and the added, I think everything that surrounded the match got ramped up. It was a marvellous atmosphere, it looked like, in the stadium. Everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves. But the game itself, we were not at our best, but we didn't have to be. We obviously got a goal, deflected goal, with the shot, from Tom Nelly that hit the post. And beyond that, we didn't really threaten. Now, were we good enough on the ball? No. And will we have to be better on the ball in possession as we progress? Absolutely. But I think you can give the players some slack, because you could feel that nervousness creep in. And I think especially once we go 1-0 up, you take that lead. And for me, in this tournament, what's absolutely key is if you can get a goal just before the hydration break. I know we didn't manage to do that, but that's kind of the momentum killer. But when we did get the goal, I thought the players just got nervous, is the best way to put it, because they understood what was at stake. They understood, this is a group that we'd spoken about previously, that it came through a lot of heartache, a lot of really poor performances and results, major championships and European ones. So they knew it was in front of them, and that just creeped into the result, the performance more than the result. We did a really good job. I mean, if you look at our system, Haiti were always going to be a threat from wide areas. They had probably the better chances overall in the game, but we did a good job of nullifying the threat from the wide areas for the most of it. A lot of it was energy sapping. You see the likes of Patterson coming on just to give us, added energy in the areas later on in the game. We had some really good defensive displays, even by the likes of Grant Hanley, who come in there and look. He's not his best for Hibs at times, because you can get too tight, you can get turned easy, but his defensive awareness was really good. Where I did think we struggled and where we probably could have changed it a wee bit in the second half was probably brought on a lighter Fletcher. Now, obviously, with Billy Gilmer not being available for selection due to his injury, not being in the squad, we lost that wee bit of control in the middle of the park. I felt there's somebody to dictate the tempo, put their foot in the ball, and really just put us at ease. But I think I generally just put that down to nerves. We can call this right lucky. I don't really care. I have no qualms about it whatsoever. If luck's on your side, take it, roll with it, and use it. So to be sitting top of the group after one game in a tournament where 3 points might see you through on some occasions, I think we have to be all really pleased. Is there things to work on? Yes. Was it a perfect performance? By no means, no. And when we are at our best, absolutely not. But it's been a long time coming. Zander wasn't around to see us win a game in the World Cup. So that tells you the kind of how long it's been. And I think that game was just simply that. And we got worse when we took the lead, and I think that just came down to nerves. But tactically, we did a decent job. We had, we were playing quite narrow in the centre with 4 players, and then we had players in kind of wider positions in the fullbacks, just trying to nullify that Haiti threat in the wide areas. I thought that worked pretty well. We didn't give up too many absolute clear-cut chances. We could have probably stopped the cross and stopped it, its source on occasion a wee bit better. But on the whole, I thought we dealt with everything. And yes, waiting for that full-time whistle just did seem like an eternity. It was very, very early on in it, and there was a Sunday morning when it did come. But look, take the win, be top of the group, and build on it. If we have 2 more performances like that and we get knocked out, we can come back and revisit it and have a general discussion. I just think we missed that control in the midfield a wee bit, especially in the second half when the game did get stretched. Because look, even some of our what you would class as are really big performances, and I'll use McTominay as an example, somebody who's playing at a very high level, won leagues at a high level, played for huge clubs like Manchester United. He didn't have his best performance in the game. I thought Lewis Ferguson was particularly excellent. The way he was able to, he was the one that relieved a lot of the pressure for us because he buys fouls so well. He's got that physical stature, but every time he was just shielding the ball, buying us a wee bit of breathing space, and then it was just on the ball. And when we were in possession, we were a wee bit slack. And nothing was kind of sticking. We weren't taking that extra touch or the final pass was off. But I do reiterate, I think it just comes down to nerves. And I'm very, very happy to take the 3 points and move on and build on it.
Zander, as Steven said there, you wouldn't classify it as a vintage performance. We talked on the last show that we've had some really positive performances coming into the game in terms of the friendlies as well. Maybe we were expecting a little bit too much, but in your opinion, in essence, was the victory the main thing that we had to get on the night?
Well, for me, as Stephen mentioned earlier, I got to see my national team win a game at the World Cup for the very first time. And, I'm not even the only one at this tournament to be feeling like that. I mean, a draw for some of these nations that we've seen this World Cup has been absolutely outstanding. Cabo Verde, for example. So it's been a massive World Cup for many kind of new-coming fans like myself as well there. So I'm really more chuffed than anything about that. The game itself, am I going to remember this in 30 years' time? I'm going to be honest, I don't think I will. It wasn't the best of performances from us. I do think nerves played a huge part in our aggressiveness and perhaps even our, how organised we were as well. Sometimes I think nerves kind of played a part in that as well. I wasn't the biggest fan as well of Clark's game management of the game. I feel like we could have done things a lot more differently, a lot better perhaps as well. Some maybe could have been a bit different as well in that regard. But overall, I think I'm just really happy to see my national team not only win a game at the World Cup, but due to results elsewhere, of course, we are looking relatively solid here to actually be making knockout football, potentially with all these other draws that are coming in. So that to me is a bit of a scary thought, but it's also a possible thought as well, which would be the first time ever. So that would be the first time any of us would see that for the Scotland team, which is also pretty exciting. So overall for me, extremely happy that we're sitting in the group with 3 points right now. Did I hope for a better? Did I hope for a better performance? Absolutely, but I'm just delighted that we've I'm sorry, I'm just delighted that we've got that one on the board now.
Yeah, I mean, I have to concur with both of you. There was so much anticipation, I think, going into the game. We've obviously seen the scenes from Boston, but there's a massive support over there. We'll come on to maybe chat about that and how the Scottish fans have really endeared themselves to the Bostonians and the natives of the city as well, and the way they've conducted themselves is a credit to themselves and to the country as well. But I didn't think it was a vintage performance. I was delighted when I seen the team lineup because I spoke to you guys that there was rumours that he wasn't going to play Shankland, he was going to go with one striker. I was glad that he decided to go with the two up top. I think it was the only way to go after the friendlies. A couple of players I just didn't think hit their stride in terms of it. I know McGinn got the goal, but still, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't think John McGinn's had a good game in a Scotland jersey in about 2 years. The goal's a massive slice of fortune, but how you're going to take it. McTominay, I felt, had very little influence on the game. In contrast to Stephen, you quite rightly pointed out, in contrast to Lewis Ferguson, who I thought was commanding in his position and was that last, that little bit extra protection in front of the centre halves. But I just felt as if after we got the goal, I agree with you, Stephen, I think the nerves kind of kicked in on the players. Whether the conditions had something to do with that, we're going to come on and talk about it, one of the 5 things. But I certainly feel as if we eased off a little bit. Maybe this is wrong to say this, but I think to a certain degree we treated Haiti with a bit too much respect. I know you go into the competition, and we talked about it on the previous shows, myself, Zander and James, that they've got every right to be the competition, as any country has who's went through the qualification process. But I just felt as if we showed them a little bit too much respect, and we should have been a bit more cutthroat in terms of, if we got a second goal, there's no threat. The game's wrapped up because, and I say again, no disrespect to the opposition to Haiti, but I just didn't see them as much of a credible threat. And I think what they did create was, it was limited. I felt we did deal with it, and we snuffed out a lot of their danger at source before it got into an area where it's a potential goal scoring opportunity. So I think we did that. We did that well, but yeah, I felt as if we get the points on the board. We're there. It's a collective sigh of relief. You've seen the scenes obviously from over in Boston and then back home in Scotland as well. There's a lot of tired eyes on Sunday morning, and I think just to get those points on the board, get a bit of momentum, enjoy being top of that group while we're there. Things are probably going to change. Hopefully for the better for us. But it was the perfect. I thought it was the perfect result. The game prior, the 1-1 draw. We'll obviously come on to talk about that when we discuss Morocco. But I felt it suited us well to go in there and obviously they're playing before us. I'm sure it gave the players a little bit of a boost to say you get the 3 points here. You're going top of the group. So no, it was happy with the result. Happy to get it on the board. 28 years down the line, as Zander said, there's a generation of young fans that haven't seen Scotland get a victory at a World Cup. I'm old enough, and Stephen and I are old enough to remember Italia 90 when we did get the victory over Sweden. So we're of that, certainly of that generation. But we need to move on. We need to talk about our upcoming opposition, as we always do on the preview. Stephen, we're about to face Morocco on Friday evening. I have to say, having watched the entire 90 minutes against Brazil, I thought Morocco were excellent in the first half, as poor as Brazil were. But yeah, so we know about Morocco's pedigree. We know about their, what they've got in abundance in terms of what they've got in their locker. I was actually taken aback by how quickly they moved up the park, I have to say, and that's having watched them through the AFCON tournament, as I know Zander did as well, followed them quite closely. But what can we expect from this Morocco side on Friday night?
Yeah, look, I think we spoke last time, and I know you boys watched them very closely in the AFCON. And to me, the AFCON's a wee bit of a red herring because they played a lot of different players. I know some players were involved, but they had a different coach, they had a different approach. I wasn't surprised by Brazil. I haven't watched them previously for what we're doing in a number of games. I had said this to a couple of my friends, a couple of weeks ago. But also, I think, and we'll maybe discuss it, or we will discuss it when we play Brazil. I thought Brazil were excellent in making the tactical changes at the hydration breaks, and I know we're going to talk about that. For all that we can talk about David Ancelotti perhaps not being, I don't think he would have been the right man for us. He was certainly involved with his father in making the alterations, and I think that's how Brazil get back into it. Morocco, for their part, obviously, they're a team that are in excellent form. I think that's the best way you can describe it. When you're looking at what they've got in front of them, they have just 3 draws and 7 wins in 10 matches. So they're a team, with really good pedigree. You see how far they are in the FIFA rankings at present. I think they're about 8, so they're a top 10 side in that regard. They set out in that kind of 4-2-3-1 formation. Again, we'll touch on it as we go through. They're going to be a huge threat to us. Conditions is going to be about 26 degrees as we record this. And look, it is going to be 3 hours earlier. Okay, so I'll leave some of this for when we talk about the hydration break. But it's clear to see, and look, as we get on to talk about the Brazil game as well, the game that took place last night at that stadium in Miami, the pitch wasn't in the best condition. The pitch, the game that's on as we record this tonight at the New Jersey Stadium, it looks a bit scarce in parts, but that could actually help us. But the conditions are going to be warmer, so they're going to have to factor that in. It was obviously a 9 o'clock local kickoff for the Haiti game. This will be 6 o'clock, so temperatures will be obviously a wee bit more extreme. You mentioned earlier, I'll just do this very quickly if anybody's there. Most people know about the Marks and Spencer's Scotland House hub that's going on there. Get yourself along to that. Obviously, the baseball was a huge thing yesterday, but there's lots of places to go and see. And look, I know somebody who obviously wouldn't preach at our church, somebody the likes of Pat Evan, but look, he is DJing a concert with Delamitri and Justin Curry. And like Delamitri, or Justin Curry in particular, has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and obviously he did the last World Cup song for us in '98. So every time he plays, it could possibly be his last. And Pat Evan, for the faults he might have in the team that he supports, if John Peel leaves you your record collection, then you must know a thing or two about music. And he was certainly somebody who, in the 80s, stood up for racism, done his part for that at a time where, well, look, he was playing for a club and an environment where it wasn't the norm. But if anybody's here, get yourself along to that. There's plenty of events obviously going to be taking part, and I think Boston will be. That Cheers bar must be completely dried out. I think the Scotland fans have absolutely drunk the town dry, which is what we're there to do. Morocco, their squad, and again, I'll come to you boys. I'll start with Zander actually. Once we get into them, they've obviously got a mix of veterans. They did so well last time in Qatar. Maybe Zander can touch on that in the AFCON because you boys have followed them very closely. But look, this is a team that have vast experience. This is a team that have been doing exceptionally well. They've put some youth in here. Obviously, the manager is coming off being the under-20s manager. The manager that stepped down said he was doing it was exhausting. So it tells you the kind of approach they've been taking. And it does seem like a very natural progression. So when I looked at some of the games, I did look at the Morocco under-21 games. Just to try and get a kind of scope on who they are and what they do. And again, when you looked at them versus Brazil, what they did really good with Brazil, especially in the opening stages, and what they did doing qualifiers a lot of time games against like Madagascar and things like that, they were quite willing to go direct. They would bait the press a wee bit. And Brazil, we'll touch on, you can get behind them a wee bit, but when Brazil did try and press a wee bit, they were happy to go long, go direct, and then play in behind. And I think you've seen that with their distribution. They had 132 attempted line breaks, so they did exceptionally well in that. When they were doing their movements, there were teams they were focused on certain areas, but you've seen it when they were building out. How they built out in certain areas was going by going direct and bypassing the midfield. Bono and goals was more than happy to do that. They would drag the two centre halves and even drag a fullback back. He would suck in some of the players, so you're pushing the midfield up about 10-15 yards, and then they were more happy then to go and press it in. Same when they were pressing from the front line. They didn't. It was more pressing triggers. So when the ball went back to Alisson and when he was going long, that's when they would try and bait it. And I think you've seen that with Bono's distribution. The vast majority of his distribution, certainly his kick from hands was centrally, kick from feet. Again, very centrally. Did have a number of short passes which were into the kind of centre half when they split. But when you look at the vast majority of his distributions, it was down a central area, getting in behind the likes of that Brazilian midfield, which I think it would be different for us. I think they might try going to wider areas because we're a wee bit more physical in that area of the park, and I think that's something that if you were looking at us in comparison with Brazil, it might be where you try to exploit them. And Brazil did make the tactical tweaks, and that's where they did come into it. Certainly, the key relationships that they have in the park. You're looking at the likes of Brahim Diaz and Sabari. Sabari, something that we'll touch upon. He's a very intelligent player, and I know his goal was excellent. And again, we'll touch on it. But there's a reason why he's going to get that move to Bayern Munich. And somebody who can play centre mid and then play centre forward isn't bad whatsoever. Bono's obviously Bonua. Again, I'll probably be butchering it. He was at the penalty shootout Hero Qatar in 2022. Decent enough keeper. I would say that. Certainly, he's somebody who's well versed there. He's 6'4", so he is good in 1v1 situations. And you've seen that again in the friendly against Norway. He made an excellent 1v1 save by just staying up till the end, but he's just got that huge frame. So if we are placed in that 1v1 situation, we're going to have to be very, very accurate because with that massive frame, he is difficult to beat. Obviously, on the right, Hakimi's a star man. He's a vice captain, plays for PSG. You've seen the link-up he has and the ability he has to go forward. And he is the most dangerous player in terms of how they like to build out. And when you see teams these days, I'm not sure, I know we'll talk about tactically what we're going to do, but the relationship that he was able to have and him and Missouri, who it went off injured against Norway, and I did think it was a wee bit of a play. He was excellent. What they were doing was coming inside and then linking with while the players were ball carrying. And when teams are sitting deeper, when you have teams like Brazil who are not particularly good off the ball, when you start really good technical players, or when you have really good technical players in deeper positions, especially from the kind of full-back, wing-back positions, then there's a lot of space for them to exploit and move into. Kimi kept very, very wide. If you look at his heat map from the game, he was somebody who was willing to just stay wide all the time, be that outlet. But his link-up play was excellent. And look, you only have to look at his stats this season in terms of progressive carries, in touches and passes. He is a top player in Ligue 1, and I know that's not much of a surprise, but it's all about kind of ball carrying. And I say Missouri at the left back from Manchester United as well. He almost mirrored him, but he was willing to come inside a wee bit more. Didn't play as high, so he was a wee bit more inverted, so he could come into that back three at times. But certainly, yeah, the two are going to be really pivotal, and how we cope with them is going to be really pivotal in how we defend this game. I think when you've seen his touch map, you've seen his progressive carriage, you've seen his passing network, it all starts down that left-hand side. He would put it into Diaz and that kind of left-hand side, but he was willing, always free to be able to get that pass and get that possession away, and then link up. He likes to, he doesn't overlap as much, he'll come inside a wee bit more, so they have got really complementary fullbacks. We know what their centre halves are like as well. They've got Jabari, they've got Agard, they've got Riyad as well from Crystal Palace. They've got Diop from Fulham. So they're a team that's really physical across that back line. I'll touch on the rest defence in a wee minute and what makes them so difficult to counter or transition against. But certainly, Zander, you've seen a lot of them. What do you make? A lot's made of the forward players, and we'll touch on that. But as the strength of their team, their fullbacks and centre halves, and just how athletic they are and how comfortable they are on the ball, because they're very difficult to, they're a team that can build out from almost any area, and they're not going to be poor in possession. We just talked about us in the Haiti game giving the ball away so cheaply. If we continue doing this game, this is a team that will punish you, but they can go direct, as we've seen from goalkeeping situations and bypass that press, or they can build out and progress the ball and link up really well and from deep as well, can't they?
Although they certainly can, yeah. It's a really nice mix in defence as well there, because you still have your kind of whippet fullbacks as well as your physical centre halves. Based on the Morocco-Brazil game, I didn't think Diop had the greatest of games, but I can say I'm really repeating a performance like that again against us. And you, of course, have their really exciting midfield, of course, a really young kind of defensive midfield there. You obviously mentioned Blade as well. He will definitely, I think, run circles around us a couple of times. He's a very exciting young player. So hitting them on any kind of break, hitting them on any kind of transition, even if we were to have, say, players on the out ball, just because we're trying to play a total haram ball in this one, it's not going to be an easy fixture whatsoever. It's going to take a lot of hard work for us to try and break through that defensive line, and of course much hard work as well to stop their attack actually getting forward, because Morocco are just talented all over the pitch, and it's going to be a really difficult one for us.
Yeah, I would say that. And look, I'm going to get on it, but I'm going to ask Iain a wee bit in the midfield. But what I would say is, when we've seen them against Norway, and when they had a couple of injuries, and obviously one of the players in the wider areas, the boy from Betis, his name will butcher in a minute. Obviously, he didn't start the game against Brazil, but when they had to make substitutions, especially at fullback area, they weren't. I don't think they looked that strong, and that was something that was very prevalent. So, look, for as good as they are at fullback, I still think the way to expose them as wide areas, they do struggle at times to stop crosses. You can get in behind them because they do tuck in and play that kind of back to you at possession, and there is space in behind. It's something that we've seen, be there in all the matches. Norway were a very, very physical side against them, and actually got a lot of joy. For all that Morocco started very well, and I know they did make changes, have injuries. Norway were able to get down the sides and get crosses in, and were very unlucky on a number of occasions not to probably do a wee bit better. And I think, look, if you're Scotland, if you're us, you're looking at it, that's where I would look to try and expose them. Obviously, the game against Brazil, they were certainly excellent. You look at the defensive actions that they had. The top of the defensive actions was Borja. Where do they play? They kind of played a mix. They didn't play a low block all that much, and obviously defending the lead. They tended to really do that kind of high block and that high press when you look at the stats that are available and see what they do. Top players, they had 4 interventions. The likes of Agard, who's 6'3", Diop, but I know he didn't have a great game, but he's 6'4". El Kabari, Sabari, Riyad, Amrabat, if he comes in, he's something to make him in, and Remy at 5'1" is excellent. But they have a really good race defence. They're really structured. So a lot of football these days, as we know, is about how good you are in transitions. When they are in our half, they really just don't allow their fullbacks to push out all the time. So that's what I'm talking about when they have that 3. They'll come in narrow, and the ball behind where it is there has to be really, really accurate. And they'll have one of the holding midfield players, whoever it will be, playing that very, very disciplined role. And obviously, at a weekend, it was Badeli. But they will be really good at trying to stop that. They're proactive. Their centre-halves being on the front foot and will not get on the ball and being able to get the ball into space makes it difficult. And again, you go to the athletic profiles, the likes of Kimi in any positions. They just build basically a defensive block. So even when they do lose the ball, they have the athleticism to get back in. And I think that's something that you see. You see the shape that they'll do. When they're going to receive it, they almost go into a 4-4-2 at times as well. I think that's what we've seen a lot of in this World Cup. It's almost been the return of the 4-4-2, and I know a lot of teams use that off the ball because it provides that structure, but they're excellent at it as well. And a team that we have to be wary of. We're going to have to be, give them really good at their high level of technical ability. I think that's going to see. And obviously they went through that managerial change. They do or have done a look to get high volume of crosses in, and a lot of it tends to be via cutbacks. They will put crosses in as well, but they will look to put a lot of cutbacks in as well. That's just really where they are. And again, if you're looking at somebody like an Aya, He's very good at being press resistant. He's playing Girona in Spain. He came to prominence during the last World Cup, and he's just been excellent. Now, he doesn't have that upper body strength. They could bring in, as I said, the likes of Amrabat, who's a wee bit more physical. Be interesting to see if they do that. They've obviously got El Khanouchi from Stuttgart they could bring in. He would be somebody who you'd be looking at. But Badouri, who's playing at Lille, he was absolutely incredible. He just had a 90. Looking at stats, 91.2% passing accuracy last season, and he was just epic against Brazil. I think that's the best way to describe him, and the way he was able to turn. When you play that holding midfield player, you want somebody who's able to turn out tight situations, Iain, don't you? He was everything that, if you were looking for a poster boy, and certainly, his opposite number, the likes of Casemiro, didn't have a particularly good game, especially off the ball. But Badouri was just incredible. He did everything so well. Again, in that middle of the park, when the ball was getting played into him, he would take it in any situation and is able to turn out. He drops between the centre half to start play. But what you do know is when you notice him, he plays up very few touches. So all his passing, he's got a lovely weight of balance. So his body shape is excellent when he's receiving the ball. So that means he's in position to just have it 1 or 2 touches. He's not having to turn, and then allowing teams to press him. He's absolutely excellent. He had 4 recoveries from the counter press, 10 progressive passes in the game with Brazil. He had 7 final third entries, just 1 foul committed, 79 touches, and I say a 91% passing accuracy. That kind of tells you where he is in terms of player. But we've just talked about the defence. Midfield, is it stronger? We might make a case for the white players and the strikers being the strongest part. But if we're going for starting 11, they've certainly got options in the midfield as well, haven't they?
Absolutely. And I think that was pretty evident in the game against Brazil, that as much as you talked about that Bono went back to front quite quickly and they went on that rapid transition, their recoveries in terms of the transition to recycle the ball was very, very impressive. The way that, and as much as I think Brazil were sloppy in their possession, I thought they gave the ball away far too easily. Just the way that they picked up the ball and moved it. There was no, sometimes in a midfield you can get, this yourself, guys, and the listeners will, that you can overplay the ball. And I thought what they did effectively was they took the ball in that tight space, won it back, and then got on that counter-attack again as well. And this is something that Scotland are going to have to be very wary about. They have options in the midfield. I think that's probably the best way to put it. As you said there, Amrabat, I was just having a look back, and it feels as if he's not been at Man United, but he's only at Man United a couple of years ago as well. So he's a real option in there as well. He's a unit. Obviously, we talked about Badi there as well, but I mean, for somebody that age, 18 years old, it's such a mature head on young shoulders. It's frightening.
That's what I would say. Perhaps the options that they don't have in other areas, maybe certainly wide areas aside, right? But in striking areas and in defensively or fullback areas, they don't have that depth. That is not the case when it comes to midfield. You have Unadi, who's obviously playing at Roma. Badadi, you say 18, incredible. Talent. 22. So the kind of profiles they've got in that area of the park as energy, but really high technical level. That's why they've done so well at the under-20 World Cups previously. That's why they're a team in the progression. I'll put it back to you. Are they the best team in this group? Are they better than Brazil? Would that be fair to say, or are we bigging them up too much and they're a team that we can get it?
What I've seen of them so far, I would say technically they're the best team. Brazil couldn't have really played any poorer than they had in that first half, and I think just the fact that Ancelotti went and gave them a rocket up the arse got them going again. I think technically they're the best team by far. I think in terms of the way you and I talked about the other night when Germany played Curacao, and you mentioned how they moved the ball quickly. Morocco were on a par, if not, and I know the opposition is slightly different for Curacao to Brazil, but the way they move the ball so quickly and they get into those transitions, they recycle, the transitions on, and the next thing you know, they're in the opposition's 18-yard box. That's the thing that impressed me so much, but also frightens me in terms of what we're coming up against. And And again, I thought they allowed Brazil to get that one that I will counter as I thought they allowed Brazil to get back into the game. I thought they really did. They could have went in my opinion, they really could have went for the jugular with Brazil if they'd wanted to. I think the occasion might have played them slightly because of the opposition. I think it might have just caught them in the headlights a little bit, and you can't blame them for that because you're at a World Cup and you're coming up against Brazil. That's always going to preoccupy your thoughts as a professional. But just on Buadi, I mean, just quickly, I know we kind of touched on him there. If he hadn't committed to Morocco, you could have seen him breaking into that France team at the next major tournament. You know, that's how good he is. You know, he was captain in the France under-21 side, and he played for them at the end of March this year. But then obviously committed to Morocco through obviously his parentage. But the fact he has committed, he's there now. He's going to be a star. He's one to watch, I think, coming out the back of the tournament in terms of, you know, we'll see moves after the World Cup. I fully expect him to start against us on Friday night. But just one incredible 18 years old. That's a mercurial talent. So yeah, I mean, just that's a roundabout way to answer the question. But yeah, I think you're right, Stephen. They are technically the best team in the group. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. And I was going to say, yeah, if you're champing on you get the potential to champ on this French squad at that age, obviously before committing to Morocco, that tells you the level of technical ability that he has. And look, that their strengths, their characteristics, are everything we spoke about, especially the 1v1s, wide areas and fullback areas. We'll touch on the wide players in a wee minute with Zander. But they are direct, and the way they can transition, you know, they go from that kind of 4-2-3-1 to 4-3-3 to a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-4-2. They're really switched on tactically as well. If you're looking at a PPDA, easier for me to say, as we often do look at, again, when you look at the stats earlier, they're maintaining about 7, which is incredible. That tells you, you know, especially in international football, where you know tempo is often criticised. Yeah, they're a team that certainly can play and put it that way. Zander, we'll come to the wide areas first of all, and I know before we touch on who's been playing up front for them and what other options that they do have, but Diaz obviously can play either side, can play centrally as well. If you're playing for Real Madrid, he's another one who is playing for Morocco, but was born in Malaga in Spain. You know, he's been around Manchester City. Excellent player. Again, his finishing is probably the thing that lets him down a wee bit, and that's a wee bit strange to say. But when you look at his kind of expected goals, he lacks a wee bit of composure. He's only getting about 56% of his attempted dribbles. He does draw fouls very well. He was fouled nearly 40 times in kind of his limited minutes for Real Madrid this season. And he is really good. We just going taking the ball in kind of 1v1 situations. He does try and draw defenders in. He'll look to kind of think that he's going to cross with his weaker foot before he'll come inside and then go to his more dominant one. Certainly going to be a massive threat. But you know, like a lot of these players, there's so many of them. But he's an excellent ball carrier. Certainly in terms of assists, key passes, that's exactly where he is. They've obviously got Adi as well. Again, this is where I'm going to butcher some names. They've got Alkimic, they've got Azuli, who went off injured against Norway. I thought it was excellent. And he was playing for Real Betis. Another one who moved to Spain. Again, just really good link-up play. Everything that Morocco did, everything. I know that Diaz was excellent, and he had that kind of chance that he put over the bar. But until he went off injured, his link-up play was second to none. Loves 1-2 touch, you know, play as well. Really good in terms of progressive carries in the opposition box. So he's going to be a massive threat. They've obviously got El Janoub. Where do you rank their wide players? A lot of people will say Morocco are dark horses, and I don't know if you can get to the World Cup semi-final previously and then be called dark horses, but wide areas particularly good. And how do we're going to talk about formation changes, but how do we try and take away what they've got from their fullbacks and wide players linking up? How do we try and take that away from them in this game? Because if we don't, we're going to get picked off, aren't we?
We most certainly are, and I'm almost curious because I was thinking about this myself after watching Brazil Morocco as well. Their wider areas are incredibly strong in this team. You also mentioned Diaz as well, who I did also think had a great game there. Of course, only 26 years of age. Of course, had a good club career there. You also even have on the left hand side El Cahus. Not really a position he plays a lot on the left hand side, but he was on loan at Stuttgart in the previous club season there. 4 goals and 5 assists for him as well after starting 19 games. He's also a good player as well that we have to watch out for, I think. This one is going to be quite difficult for us. I do wonder if we just go for a man for man here and just hope that they maybe have a bad night. We maybe stay close to them. Stop these passes going forward. Try and get the passes at their feet. Perhaps stop them from moving. I think that might be the kind of best course of action there. Won't be an easy one, of course. I mean, we spoke with their midfield extensively as well, so it's difficult to try and isolate the wingers when their midfield is so strong and can really just get the ball up the pitch anyway to make those chances. So for my best solution would be to go man for man there and try and stop them in that regard. But if the logical choice would be Robertson and probably Hickey again in those full back areas. So I would be kind of curious on how they would handle that situation. Robertson obviously loves to go forward quite a lot as well there. So I do wonder if Diaz is going to have his number the whole game, which is obviously not ideal given how quality he can hit across and stuff as well. Obviously, we'll speak about the Moroccan striker as well, who's obviously great at picking up those crosses to score his goals now and again. That one's going to be extremely difficult, I think, and I'm not quite sure how to combat it. And if I'm not really sure, then I imagine Steve Clark's got no fucking clue. So.
Yeah, I mean, you almost need an extra pair of lungs to play against them. That's what I would say. Iain, their striking options, obviously they get Ben Sugar, who's at Leverkusen. He's really good at, being in the upper percentiles for shot creating chances. They've also got the likes of Racimi, probably not going to feature or will be an impact player. They've got El Kababi, obviously played at Olympiacos. He's got 53 goals in 88 appearances. But they have been playing Sabari. And Sabari, who's been at PSV Eindhoven, who finished the game against Brazil with that excellent chip finish when he was put through. It's certainly not somebody you would ever class as a out-and-out striker, but that's where he's been deployed in the lead up to this tournament. That's where, since the managerial change, he's been primarily used for Morocco. And is this just a case of, because they want so many rotations, the teams that I think, the likes of Morocco and the likes of Germany, there's obviously differences in it, but the other teams in this tournament so far that have played with a lot of their rotations, and when you look at what Sabari does, he drifts into kind of wide areas. He'll primarily drift over that right hand side, or he'll drop deeper where you see he got that run to get his goal, obviously, against Brazil, and then they play that ball through. But is that to allow the likes of Diaz to get in the ball and then go beyond, and then there are other wide players to be the threat? So, this is, you've talked about the influence of Spain and Spanish football. We've talked about them on the Moroccan side. Is this just another version of Spain's kind of false nine, and it's a movement, and what they're banking on is how do you know when to pick up? And if Zander's talking about going from man, you've got a real danger if you're going to go man for man with Sabari, and you're going to actually go and get sucked in, and then when that ball goes in behind, it's going to be Diaz that does it, or if you're going to go with Diaz, it's going to be Sabari or the likes going in behind. So do you almost have to be so disciplined and go Zorro and just try and limit the space? Because in certain games when Morocco have played against a low block, they have struggled, but you're then taking into consideration that this is a team that can change things up very quickly and are good and willing to shoot from distance. So how do you view it, and what do you think they're doing the kind of forward areas, or do they decide to, because it's us, do something completely different and bring a more traditional striker into the fold?
No, I don't think they changed their game plan, and I think it's where they've gotten. It's advantageous for them in the forward areas that they've got players that can be. You use the term there, obviously a false nine, but they've got players that can come. They can come wide and they can create that space for the midfield to come through. And I think that was pretty evident against Brazil that the way that they dragged out some of the Brazilian defenders to create those spaces, and that's when I talked about those fast transitions that they can do. It's something that, having an out-and-out striker who's just going to sit on the lip, on the shoulder of the defenders, the centre half, so he's just going to sit on 18-yard line and pick up those scraps and those opportunities. None of them really fit that profile because of the way that they play and the ability to go into those wide areas and actually be, a false nine. But it's cheating, it's moving in and swapping over and and making it difficult for defenders. As a defender, you hate to play against it because you would rather know where that player's going to be within, your own zone within the field as well, because you're going to say, right, I'm going to pick up X, I'm going to pick up Y. They've got such movement with the forward players that it makes it difficult for defenders to say, right. And that's when you start as a defender, your back line needs to communicate at an even higher level than it would have to. So I don't think they change it. I'm the same as you, it's a debate when we come to talk about our teams, but I would, going man for man, I think would be tricky because they're so good at moving into that space. I think you're literally going to have to, we're going to have to do our homework on this. I'm sure we have already. But it'll be interesting to see what their starting 11 is, because I think it'll give us an idea of how they're going to approach it. I just don't think they change it. I think that Morocco, they go with what they're doing at the moment, because, as I say, for that first 45 minutes against Brazil, I thought it worked brilliantly.
Yeah, and look, playing Sabari up front it's kind of genius. I know he's done it before, and he can play a number of positions from out wide to deeper roles. But he's preparing a centre mid, but it only works when you have the movement available in wide areas. And again, I'm not going to butcher the boys from Betis' name, but if he's back in, that provides an extra layer of difficulty for us, because you have these fullbacks who are excellent in 1v1 situations, going to come forward. You have Missouri, who's going to come inside as well, and he's particularly strong on the ball and then linking up. So I think man for man, it only takes somebody to run off you. And they're a team which has got physical and technical ability that, for me, I would probably just try and limit the space and frustrate them. I think that's probably our best bet. Where I do think they are particularly weak is defending corners. It's something that has been apparent. And I think in this World Cup we'll probably see a change. If you're going to project to the Euros in 2 years, I think you'll see a lot of teams focus on set plays. But where a lot of the teams have struggled and probably are not putting that much emphasis is on set plays. We didn't really utilise them too well against Haiti, but I do wonder if I don't want to say we're saving it. That would be wrong, but I think there's a lot. A game like this, we have to put a larger emphasis on it. It's just clear. But one thing you do absolutely notice now, because they have the players in forward areas that we talked about, Morocco, they are, they're really dangerous in transition, and they are leaving 2 and 3 players up. So every game you see them, every game you watch them, they will almost get opportunities just on straight transitions from corners, because they are brave, they are bold. They're going to say, right, we're going to leave 2 or 3, whether it be Diaz or a couple of other players, in advanced positions. If that ball breaks, they're like whippets, they're off, and then you're obviously on your heels. But again, we'll use the Norway game, we'll use other games that we've seen them. They are vulnerable, especially to in-swingers into the box. First contact, second contact. They are not, for all of the height that they have, they play that, most teams do, the kind of hybrid of the 3 zonal ones. We can certainly get them by just disrupting runs. Norway had an awful lot of joy mixing up, going front post, back post to the centre, but every one of them were in-swingers. And the keeper, for all his height, he is not comfortable coming. But again, where you have to give them absolute, top-notch respect is what they can do in the transition, because as soon as that ball's cleared, they are on the attack, and they have players in advanced positions. They will spread out. I don't want to call it the Mighty Ducks, but that's kind of what it is. So they stretch the pitch very quickly, and within a couple of seconds, they can literally get up the other end of the park, and that's something we're going to have to be really, really aware of. Hakimi obviously is excellent at taking dead ball situations. Diaz will be ones as well if he's taking free kicks, but Hakimi tends to be the one that will do it. Sabari as well, and then you get the targets like Sadop in the middle, and you get Ebze. Diaz tends to look for a lot of near post in-swingers. They have played a lot of short corner variations, so when teams have a lot of height, it's just about getting movement. We watch corners every game. It's just variation. It's just trying to switch up. We're looking at who's at the threats from direct free kicks. It's Hakimi, it's Diaz, and then from throw-ins, they're not a team that are going to come and do a lot of long throws. Again, they have a lot of rotations. We'll see that, but it tends to be about just trying to, when they're pressed, when they're pinned in, playing out, and because they have got so many players that are comfortable in tight situations, they are able to do that, and they're able to really expose in teams in that regard. Diaz tends to be the first choice taker, but look, they've got a lot of experience, and it's probably when I'll finish up and I'll pass it back to Zander. Having, you watched that AFCON and how it ended and everything else, but one thing they've got, and one thing they've got from the last World Cup as well, is they have experience in penalty shootouts, and quite often we see teams who have experience in that. Now, obviously, we hope not to be given any penalties away, and let alone we obviously can't go to a penalty shootout. But when you have teams that are versed in these kind of high pressure situations, they have a lot of very, very confident penalty takers. I mean, the friendly they played before the World Cup against Madagascar, Rahimi scored, but keeper's left hand side. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't expect him, even if he was on the pitch, to be the first choice penalty taker. So that tells you, again, how comfortable they are in these type of situations. So while we can expose them, and I think absolutely a huge focus has to be on exploiting them via corners when we get them, make them count, would be my message, and being very, very switched on in terms of the transition phase of them. They're a team that are going to carry a threat from, the deliveries of Diaz, Hakimi, or others, from dead balls, but also if we are faced with a daunting prospect of having them from 12 yards, they're going to be a team that has great experience in that, aren't they?
No, they most certainly are. Definitely don't think Brahim Diaz, however, is top of that list anymore, thanks to the 12-minute wait at the and he still missed it. But no, they are. Experience all over is absolutely correct there, Stephen. Of course, our team doesn't actually have any experience. It's been far too long since we were last in the World Cup for anyone to still have experience coming here. Of course, Morocco got to the semi-finals, so not only do they have experience in the knockout side of things, they've got massive experience in the group stage side of things as well. We are really playing, I would say, a pretty much giant here in its own right. When you look at this game as well, they're going to be heavy favourites for us. Some would argue that that's maybe where Scotland are at their best when we were playing against the heavy favourites. We all, of course, remember the historic game against Spain at Hampden in regards to that as well. That, I think, is where my confidence comes from, is just the fact that we can show up, we can play better, we can almost match the tempo and the intensity when it comes to the better sides in international football for us. But yeah, let's not be giving away daft silly challenges or late challenges when they get into the box there, because they will make the most of those challenges. So if even perhaps that goes the other way there, let's try and chuck a wee dive in there. Looks like referees and VAR is not working properly right now. So
sorry guys, just a wee kind of pause there, but thanks Stephen for that fantastic breakdown of Morocco. You really can't get much more comprehensive than that in terms of the opposition we're about to come up against, and we've went and talked through, right across the spine of the team there as well, so we know what Scotland are going to face. Zander, can you remind us about the last time that Scotland faced Morocco? This is going to give some of the older listeners, me and Stephen, PTSD. What was the score? I think we all remember it, those of a certain vintage as well, but remind us of that, the last time that we played Morocco, which was in the 1998 World Cup.
Yes, it was indeed. Fun fact, actually, it is the only time we have played Morocco. I can't find any maybe sort of like daft friendly we could have played in the past there. This seems to be the only time that we have met Morocco. So it will be the second time, of course, when it comes to the game coming up here. We did lose 3-0, of course, here. And it was also beautifully kind of set up as well in the second half when we got an early red card for Craig Burley as well in the 53rd minute there. Even at 2-0, you think, this could somehow still be salvageable, but when you hit a red card at around after the 50th minute, I think that's when you kind of call it quits there a little bit as well. We'll say we played a back five, if I'm not mistaken, this one, gentlemen, for this game here, with like Jury and Gallagher probably up top in that one. But players like Basir and Hada at the time, I've done my little research on them on previous, even guys like obviously the Haji as well there. I've done my little bit of research on those guys. They were actually pretty good players back in the day. We absolutely got our asses handed to us. So please God, do not let that happen again.
No, let's hope not. As I said, wee bit of PTSD there. I was in Magaluf at the time on holiday, so much so that we took the result that badly. We decided to conga around the town into the sea, which was the done thing in the late 90s. Have a wee look for it, but it was had to make the best of a bad situation. Anyway, gentlemen, let's move on to our 5 things. So first of all, changing system. Stephen, I'll come to you first. Do Scotland and does Steve Clarke change the system as regards to the opposition we're about to face in Morocco?
Yes, I think we have to go with that. back three, back five with the wing backs because of the danger that they pose from fullback and wide areas. I said earlier it's about limiting the space and frustrating them. But if we don't engage them at some point and we just invite that pressure on, then it's almost as futile as just saying, let's do it. Now, obviously, in a lot of games we have been playing four at the back. That's tended to be the way that he's went. And it can still shift to a four on occasion. So fluid, formations these days are very much fluid. But at times it could be very much a defend in the box, frustrate them, stopping the cross at source, and trying to just crowd everything out. That's certainly what I would go with, because I think the more space you give them, as Brazil did, especially in behind and in wider areas, then the more dangerous that Morocco look and the more comfortable they look. So you want to take away as much of a threat as you can with regards to them because of everything they've outlined and the technical and athletic ability that they have. My aim here would be go back to Steve Clark ball, frustrate the life out of them. Take your time for goal kicks, all that kind of stuff that, as Rangers supporters, we would generally more about teams coming to Ibrox to do. But this is what's going to be required. We're going to have to be better on the ball when we get it. We're going to have to, carry some sort of threat. And I think the way to do that, because they're not particularly strong in stopping crosses either. You can make the argument of it, let's play wingers and let's try and go at them. But if you're trying to match up, we'll say Gannon Doak, for instance, right, to go 1v1 with either of the Moroccan fullbacks, the physicality both have, I think they can just match him, runs and see him out. And then because we're probably going to be stretched, even if he gets the ball in the box, the options in the centre is going to be very limited. So sometimes in that, it's just about putting shallow crosses in and getting the likes of the players that we know advanced and then taking your opportunities. And even if that leads to creating throw-ins, corners, and building off that, fine. But yeah, I would be, if it was myself, I would be going back to that back three, back five, whatever you might call it. It's a kind of base core formation, but at times it might even be looking like a back six. And then in possession, you can certainly shift it and build out in different ways and see what the game gives you. But I think you try and limit how much you invite them on because they've got ball carriers. I know people argue, well, let's double up on them, but the movement, they will then play the little 1-2, they wall passes and spin you in behind. And my great fear would be we would end up very, very isolated in certain areas and just be exposed in that manner.
Zander, as Steven said there, he talked about a back three trying, it can become a back five. Do we just need to kind of, as much as we want to see Scotland on the front foot, do we just need to bite the bullet here and, dust off the old low block?
Yeah, I think we do. I think kind of positional discipline is going to play a big role for us in this one. I would definitely be going for a back three that can transition into a back six, maybe even a back seven, because let's be honest here, Morocco are going to be right on top of us, so might need all the players back as we can there. Probably in many situations, it's not a situation that we all enjoy watching, but it is of course one of reality where our entire 11 is actually behind the halfway line. Sometimes that does happen, when a team is totally on top of you, they are a better side than you. You do unfortunately have to have those situations. When we get to the predicted teams, of course, or of course the teams that we would play, I'm hoping that he maybe was a bit different, from the team that I've kind of predicted he'll pick. But yeah, definitely got to switch to that to the formation that, let's be honest, he loves it, right? He loves going the kind of back three, back five situations anyway. That's his wheelhouse. So I reckon he will transition the system to that in Morocco.
Okay, just moving on to number 2 of our 5 things. Now, this is a bit of a controversial one because there has been a lot of chat over the last few days about it, but I want to kind of focus on the more kind of specific Scotland angle for this. Hydration breaks, are they a negative or a positive for us, Steven?
Depends if you need a beer. If you're at the game and you're needing a Michelob Light, or you're in a pub and needing a pint of Tennent's or whatever, then hydration breaks can be a great thing. Look, in general, it's turned into a game of basketball. It shouldn't be in there long term. And the conditions that we might find ourselves in on Friday, and the conditions we're certainly going to find ourselves in come Miami. We haven't yet faced any thunderstorm delays, but that's a very real possibility as well down the line. So I think we have to take that into consideration, how we manage the stoppages in play. But from a Scotland angle, hydration breaks are going to be, I think they're going to be our friend in the next 2 games. And looking, if we are going to progress in this tournament, we're going to, and let's see, we finish first, which would be great. But if we finish second or third, you're going to face teams that, probably of a higher quality overall than you. So where the hydration breaks suit is teams that are wanting to kill momentum. This is a game we absolutely want to just kill the momentum right out of it, kill the tempo out of it. Yes, again, we'll have to carry a threat in certain situations, but they could be our absolute saviour in this one. So I know they're frustrating, they're a bit ridiculous, and they're probably done to give Fox some extra adverts. I think it's 500 million. They're raking in an extra advert, so it's certainly paying for itself in that regard. But at the same point, while against Haiti, it probably worked against us, these next 2 fixtures, I think it can certainly work for us. And look, if I've seen teams, there was teams in the warm-up to it, and I think it takes you boys, like just before the hydration breaks, keeper was going down, and if Angus Gunn wants to take a wee bit extra time on the ball, if it's 0-0 or we're winning or whatever, takes a wee extra minute just before that hydration breaks, you are absolutely frustrating the life out of the opposition, and then you're forcing them into making tactical changes. I think the bigger question is, where I would have concerns is that the teams that are in this competition, there's a lot of now club managers over international managers, and what I mean by that is, a lot of the countries, especially the higher end, England's, Germany's, Brazil, they've got managers who are so tactically astute, and the amount of data, the amount of in-match resources available now is incredible. So even Pochettino in the USA games, they're using that as almost a tactical reset, basically like basketball. So that information has been filtered very quickly. I haven't seen us use that to that extent well enough in hydration breaks, and that's where I would have concerns more over the stoppages themselves. I think the stoppages can help us, but I would like us to make the adjustments necessary that we need, and hopefully we can do that. But yeah, let's slow it down, let's frustrate them, because let's be honest, a point is an absolutely brilliant result for us. Doesn't mean you have to play for a point, but we have to be disciplined, we have to be compact. It's going to be energy sapping. We're Scottish, for any even players playing in Italy and things like that, we are not used to this much vitamin B. We're not sun worshippers. It doesn't come natural to us. Okay, so that has to be taken into consideration. So slowing the tempo down is going to suit us, but I would like to see us use or make adjustments in the hydration breaks a bit better. And perhaps that's unfair because we did get the victory against Haiti, as I said, and that's all that mattered. But they're going to be absolutely key throughout this competition, not just for us, but for every other team as well, who makes the changes and is able to take advantage of them.
Zander, just on that point, there's the obvious reason for it, as it says, it's a hydration break, and because of the high temperatures you get in North America during the summer. But as Steven kind of touched on there, can Scotland use it to our advantage in terms of doing a tactical reset, as Steven said there, getting instructions onto the field, which sometimes in an atmosphere can be quite difficult. Do we need to think, do the management team need to think along those lines, that it's almost developing and well, surprise, surprise, it's in North America and the USA, it's almost turning into a game of 4 quarters, isn't it?
It is, and as someone that typically loves a 4-quarter sport, I just don't want to see it in my football personally. But it does certainly look to be becoming that as well at the moment. For me personally, I look to a game like Spain versus Cape Verde, for example, where we saw hydration breaks especially come into play for a side like Cape Verde, who could kill the momentum for Spain there, and obviously get to regroup and reassess the situation. Where are Spain hitting us? Let's focus on that. Let's tackle on that. And at the end of the day, Cape Verde got a historic point out of it. I reckon Scotland could do the exact same here against this Moroccan side. I reckon we hit all those points. We take our time. We hit those points naturally from the hydration breaks. Obviously, have a big look at it at half time as well. And if we can truly play this right, these hydration breaks could be huge for us. And other aspects of the game, I do understand that the advert breaks are frustrating for people, and I obviously understand as well that when you're really getting into the game, all of a sudden the whistle has to be blown for a good 5-minute stoppage there. And it looks like the minutes are just added back on at half time and full time. I'm not really sure where all these injury times are coming from, but they just seem to throw the minutes back on anyway. So sometimes you kind of wonder what even is the point in the hydration breaks now. But no, I think for a side like us at the moment, definitely something we have to take advantage of. I reckon if we can frustrate Morocco enough where they're going to hate hydration breaks, but we are obviously going to love them because we can kind of regroup there. I certainly think we should take advantage of them when they come for us against Morocco.
Moving on to point number 3 of our 5 things, something a little bit different, gents. I've just thought of this just now and thinking about the current circumstances in Boston. The support that Scotland have got at the moment, I think, is pretty phenomenal. We can all agree that, what a fantastic impression our support's made. A lot of people will be at the game, again, at the Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. Can that be something the players draw upon, that energy or synergy, as we like to call it, from the fans? Is an advantage having as many travelling fans? Just while we're recording tonight, I'm watching a segment on the news where England fans in Dallas, and by comparison, it looks pasty. It doesn't look, there doesn't seem to be much going on. Whereas you see what Scotland have done, the Scotland fans have done in Boston. They've been embraced by the city, been embraced by the local populace. The players will be seeing that. They'll be seeing that as well. They'll know that feel-good feeling's there. But can it make a difference on the night? Can that energy coming from the stands drive the players on, Stephen?
Absolutely. Look, we've all been at games. Seville would be for us, and the result wasn't to be there. Manchester as well. If you're a player that you don't get inspired and take it on board and gives you that extra 1-2%, whatever, then you're in the wrong business. The scenes from Boston up until this point has been incredible. I was in Cologne when it was. Look, I think my political views are well publicised, okay, and what I'm not in terms of being a nationalist, right? But you cannot take away from that Flower of Scotland national anthem singing. On Saturday night, it was Pint England. In Cologne, it was the same. So the vast majority of fans are Scottish fans. The fact that we're taking over the baseball game, the fact that we're taking over the city, I don't think Florida will know what's hit them. And Florida's a place where I said a vast majority of it parts for a long number of years. But if you're a Scotland player, then you have to embrace every single minute of it, because this could be an opportunity. The stadium is fantastic as well. Again, this was a World Cup that had so much, as a few of them have been before it, that there's so much negativity brought up about it. Okay, and there is things that we can quite rightly criticise and we can have discussions around, and I think that's fair. Okay, but the stadia, the facilities that are on offer, perhaps speaking to a few boys that are out there, the issues with the transport to that Boston Stadium, Gillette Stadium, as I mentioned, and getting there isn't always easiest. It's one of the grounds. It's called the Boston Stadium. It's not in Boston. It's in Foxborough. The Dallas Stadium's Arlington. It's about an hour and a bit outside, but it is next to the Texas Rangers Stadium. Some of these stadiums are a wee bit out. Same with the Miami Stadium, but the actual facilities themselves, the weather, everything else is second to none. I mean, the Dallas Stadium's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Then you look at that SoFi Stadium, you look at something like the Atlanta Stadium. So if you're taking over the type of arenas and bringing what I would class as a European fan culture, and we've seen the Dutch the other night in Dallas as well. They have that wonderful song about, I think it's drink to the left, drink to the right, and all that. They bring their bus and all that colour that they do with it. When you bring that European atmosphere, which is different, I'm not saying it's better because that would be unfair, but it's different to what the African culture brings or the South American culture brings. When you bring that European, don't we say aggression? It's not aggression, it's just the way that we partake in watching football matches. Then I think we've inspired the locals, let alone inspiring the players. I think you look at how Germany views Scottish fans in general on the back of the European Championships a couple of years ago, and this is what the world's been missing when, and I'm going to say this, when Rangers have been a poor Rangers has coincided with a poor Scotland team and getting to these kind of events, right? The two of them go very much hand in hand, and this is what the world has been missing. But I think the players have been, will be, and continue to will be inspired. But beyond that, I think the world will be continue to be inspired. You don't have to go back to Euro 92 when it was 8 teams, who won, the award for the best fans? And I know there'll be some people sitting on here talking about Tartan Army or something. Listen, Rangers supporters made up the vast majority of that. Rangers supporters, when the crossbar was, obviously very brittle at Wembley, was vast majority of Rangers supporters. In fact, one of them sits next to me, Ibrox, who he'd even a bit of that Wembley turf in it is a couple of houses ago, I'm sure, in his garden. We have inspired football since the beginning. We created the game, and I think that's what we'll continue to do. But can it inspire the players? Absolutely, because if not, what the hell are you doing there? We'll look at these scenes from Saturday night. I think as well on Saturday night, because it was a night game, it just added that way. Night games are always a wee bit different, aren't they? But how can you not get energy? How could you not feel that if you're in that stadium? I've been sent some of the videos, but boys, it's incredible. And I say I stood in Cologne. They talked about decibels there. Enjoy it. It's different from Rangers, I will say that, but enjoy it and continue to inspire, because we're all representing our country and we want us to do well. But absolutely,
Zander, I'm just going to take a slightly different angle on this. We are on a Rangers network, so I want to bring a Rangers related point in. The energy that's been generated in Boston, the scenes that we've seen there just now, listen, we're not going to kid on. There's a chasm within our own support when it comes to following Scotland, and for good reason. You can fully understand it. We all understand it. You could really probably split the Rangers support halfway down the middle. The scenes that we're seeing in Boston, the good energy that's around the team at the minute, the fact that there are several Rangers players in the squad, and if things are going to go the way we think they're going to go in terms of our new or soon-to-be new managerial appointment, as we record on the Tuesday evening, there's nothing official yet about Derek McInnes, but he wanted to bring to my mind, more of a Scottish element into the team. Can this go some way to healing and bringing those who have drifted away from the national team back in there? And I think Steven's right. I think if you've got a strong Rangers, you've got a strong Scotland. All three of us on this show have been proponents of having Rangers players within the national side. I think it's only going to grow in the years going forward. But can this be the beginning of something where we start to see it come back in amongst some of the Rangers support and those who have felt alienated in the past?
I would certainly hope so. And if there is anyone listening, even to this preview, just thinking that I can't support this national team anymore, if seeing 4 Rangers players at the Scotland for the Scotland team there, which is the most representation out of any team for the Scotland national team, we have 4 players there. That's the highest for that national team. If that does kind of make you think, I'm going to give Scotland a very good go again, we'd be happy to have you. You guys heard the Flower of Scotland against Haiti there at the kickoff. That was magnificent. I think that's the best rendition I've ever heard of it, to be honest. Just how loud it was in that stadium when everyone was up and singing that. I hope we kind of see something similar again against Morocco, to be honest. It was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I do agree with you as well, Iain. I think going forward we will see more kind of the Scottish core players coming up from even the Rangers ranks, or if we go ahead and sign some kind of better Scottish players and they represent us as a club there to head for national team games as well. It would be a bit of a classic feeling for Rangers players to be filling in the Scottish national team ranks as well. So that to me is only a positive thing going forward. As I say, we have the 4 now, thanks to signing Shanklin before he left. So we do have the 4 representing us, of course, there with Curtis, Suter and Kelly as well alongside them. So I was extremely happy when I saw the team come out as well, of course, for that. And it's only continued to make me happy to see that these guys can obviously feature for the national team as well. I do hope that it grows going forward, and I hope that the support can kind of get back on Scotland's side there. But I do understand why you guys hate them. I also would understand if you continue to dislike the national team, but I do hope that opinions can change a little bit there in the future if more Rangers players are representing Scotland as well.
See on that, before you move on, Iain, I was going to say our probably very soon to be named manager, I believe, was at the game on Sunday, right? Our chairman, who's obviously part of the ownership group at the 49ers, who, Levi Stadium, or, the Bay Area Stadium, was hosting a game on Sunday, chose to be in Boston, and was very warmly received, I believe, there. That tells you what they think of it. So Zander said there's 4 players and counting. Let's see where it is, and let's see where it goes from here, because they are intertwined. And I think if the manager's there, the chairman's making that choice, it'd be very easy for our chairman to be in San Francisco, and very much a home setting, taking the game in. That was a very outgoing choice to go and say, I'm going to go and soak it up. And he made that because he wanted to embrace fan culture. And look, it's going to be a learning curve for him. I'm sure he would have spoke to people in the bars and everything else. He would have given the lowdown at Scottish football. But I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And for everybody who still, I said before this tournament started, if you still want to hate on it, you don't enjoy football. The World Cup's excellent. It's always been different. But don't hate it just for the sake of hating it. And you can separate what you want to separate. But otherwise, everybody's got a right to enjoy it they want to as well.
All I'll say just on the end of that before we move on to the teams and the score, that there was a well-known Scottish TV presenter by the name of Muriel Gray that put on X and said it's great to have our flag back for a couple of weeks. It's fantastic. It's great to see people who normally wouldn't, really embrace football domestically, really getting behind the national team. And it is our flag. It's part of our heritage as Rangers supporters as well. Always has been our flag. It's adorned our strips for many years. Every league title that's up there in the trophy room is on the back of a saltire. So it is our flag. It's part of our fabric and makeup. It's part of the other national flag, which is a Union flag as well. It makes up that. It's been there for a number of years and it's not going to go away. So it is great to have it back. And for all the political side of it, I will nail my colours to the mast like Steven. I'm not a nationalist in any shape or form. I'm a proud Scot. I'm also proud to be British, but Scotland is where I was born and where I live at the moment and where I've decided to bring my family up. So I wouldn't change that for the world. And it is really positive. It's just very, very positive. And I'll stop there because I could talk about it for hours. But let's hope we get that positive result, which we'll come on to talk about in a minute. Steven, what's our starting 11 going to be against Morocco?
I've got Angus Gunn goals. I have a 3 centre-half pairing of Suter, McKenna and Tierney. I have Curtis at left full-back. Yeah, I can see it would probably be Andy Robertson that would come in there. But look, this is a game that we're going to need a lot of energy, and I think we're going to need the 5 subs. So I can see Robertson being rotated out. I think on the other side we'll play Patterson, but I think Finlay Curtis will have a part to play in that. The midfield, I have got Ferguson and Fletcher to give us a wee bit more control and some physicality. I've got a kind of narrow box with McTominay and McGinn. McGinn isn't always the best on the ball, but he's excellent at ball carrying, winning fouls and just getting that arse in the way at times, where McTominay's more that box crasher, that far more technical player, and I think we have to be compact in there. And up front, I've got Adam starting just because of the energy that he can provide over Shankland. Shankland's excellent there too, but I think this might be a game where you're going to use the squad in the 3 games. It's going to be 3 different lineups, and everybody knows how high regard on Shankland, but he apart from he would be off the bench at this point in time. You might even see the likes of Lyndon Dykes come on, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he can link up and he might provide them with something in terms of a more direct threat that they're not too used to. So that would be my team, but I think it's a game where you're going to, because of the nature of the opposition and everything that we've discussed, energy levels are going to be so key, especially in the closing stages, because tired legs lead to tired minds, and everybody just has to do their job.
Zander?
For me, I went a bit rogue with this one, guys, to be honest. So I've got obviously Angus Gunn in goals there. I went for the back 3 of Suter, Hanley and McKenna. I think that could be some laugh, to be honest. And a kind of flat midfield 4 there. I've got Hickey, McTominay, Ferguson and Robertson. Unfortunately, Stephen, I think Steve Clarke's too... I think he's too set in his ways to be swapping out his captain for this one. Unfortunately, I thought McTominay and Ferguson actually played pretty well as a partnership against Haiti, so I'd like to see that again now and against kind of better opposition there. And for my forward 3, we spoke about maybe outballs not being the wisest of choice for us. I still want to see some outball players. I still want to see players that can carry the ball with pace as well. So I've also went with Doak Adams and McGinn in this scenario. Of course, I do also agree with Stephen. I think we'll use all of our 5 subs as well on this one. So you will, of course, see that kind of change about a little bit up in striker. Obviously, you throw on Dykes to kind of win the ball first of all, and then you can sky it any Rose Ed, of course. Even guys like Curtis as well is going to come on to carry the ball a bit better, and then he'll have that energy as well going forward. But that's my first 11 there against Morocco.
Okay, I'm going to go with... I don't think he's going to change the shape. I think he's going to keep it the same. The only changes, I'll go gun and goals. I think Patterson comes in at right back. I thought he was quite solid when he came on, and I thought Hickey had a bit of a rough time, especially in the first half. I think Hanley and Henry remain at centre back. Robertson, he's not going to drop his captain. Going into the midfield, I think Gannon Doak might drop out, and I think Finlay Curtis is going to start with McTominay and Ferguson in there. McGinn will retain his place, and I think he'll go with Adams and Shankland up front. I know we keep talking about, we think we need to really kind of adapt to the opposition. I'd like to see him go for it. That might be fanciful. Probably will be the formations that you boys have talked about, but never mind. So, Stephen, what's the score going to be against Morocco?
A historic 1-1, where we basically progress to the latter stages of international competition for the first time.
Zander?
I'll give it a big old dirty 0-0. You might think that Arteta was our manager for this one. I think you'll see the most dirties of handball going to keep Morocco out, and I think we can do that for the 90-95 minutes these games end up being the World Cup now. So I'll go for 0-0.
Okay, I'm going to keep on the positive train, the positive express that's rumbling out of Boston Station. I'm going to go 2-1 Scotland, 6 points through, and happy days. Gentlemen, anything else before we go?
No, if it's 2-1, might not be another pod if it's 2-1. That could be a World Cup right in there, can it?
It might well be. Well, nothing now remains but to thank my 2 fantastic co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Harrigan.
Pleasure as always. Thank you very much, gents.
And Stephen, safe travels when you fly out to the good old US of A on Friday.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure you're going to have a great time, and want to see plenty of photos, especially of you with a beer in your hand. And once again, my sincere thanks to my wingman through the World Cup, and it will remain to be my wingman through the World Cup, Mr. Zander Staff. Zander, thank you.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Thanks for having me back on there. 2-1 Scotland. Okay, I can't go over that. Sorry, some prediction, but no. Thanks for having me on, Iain.
Lads, let's be positive. It is the World Cup after all. And once again, can I thank all the listeners? We will be back, or I will be back in short order. Unfortunately, with Stephen being in the US and Zander's sunning himself abroad as well, it will be me and 2 others that will bring you the preview for the Brazil game. That is obviously going ahead Wednesday the 24th, so that will drop for you on Tuesday the 23rd. Please leave your comments in there. Anything, if you think I'm totally lost the plot with my match prediction, then please feel free to put it in there. But once again, thanks for listening, and come on Scotland.
That was a Heart and Hand production.